agency, but I'm trying to give you an example of what's going on in Canada. And there is absolutely no spousal protection. In other words, if you're a spouse and you have joint tenancy and you live together and are married forever until one dies, you can wind up losing the matrimonial home. You only wind up with half, as if you were separated or divorced. And, you know, that's completely unfair and unjust. And what's worse is that the severance of your joint tenancy can be done by a spouse, just to be mean, in secret. So what I'm attempting to do here is make the world aware of properties in Ontario and most of Canada are an unsafe investment. Mortgage theft, property theft, mortgage fraud, estate embezzlement, spouses losing matrimonial homes are all made legal by secret filing. Now, this picture is a house that I owned with my mother, and because my mother wound up in abject poverty and in debt, and I didn't know why, and she didn't understand what was going on, that my brother had literally stolen the estate. And he did it legally. He had the legal right to do that. And there's more on my website in detail on how he got around doing that. But it's being done every day because of secret filing. As a registered owner, you don't even have the right to know that there's any change on title. And this is a property that was worth at the time well over $250,000. But because she was in such abject poverty and I had to sell in duress, I sold for almost half that. And she was over $88,000 in debt. And that's not just my mother. This happens to a lot of people. But this is just a sample of what can happen to you as a spouse. Now, I don't understand why lawyers don't seem to care. These are the properties that were involved. There was a duplex. There was a garage that was derelict, but the property itself was very large. You could build a 10-plex apartment unit on it. It was basically a vacant lot. And the matrimonial home was easily made into a duplex by the new owner. A solid brick garage where you could build an apartment on the second floor. And an 11-plex. Now, that's a very valuable estate worth over $1 million, and we wound up with absolutely nothing. The horror of what happened to us, it starts with lawyers not advising us of the fact that this secret filing is legal, and the police won't help you because it is legal to do anything you want in secret. So you got to be... I don't know how else to make people understand. Secret filing is banned in every other country but Canada. I mean, can you imagine? This is my mother now. The next picture I'm going to show you. Here she is, a few months before she died. She lost everything. And she was 95 before she even found out that she didn't even own the matrimonial home. Can you imagine after 61 years of marriage and at age 95, 18 years after your violent husband who has abused you for 61 years is dead, you suddenly discover you don't even own the matrimonial home because, in secret, he severed the joint tenancy. But in law, he's allowed to do that, and as a registered owner, you don't have the right to any kind of notification that you've now lost half your property. And you don't even have the right to be notified. Now in Saskatchewan, all of that is illegal. I'll go into that later. And by then she had depleted her life savings renovating these properties that she thought she owned. And under Section 7 of the Charter of Rights, supposedly, if your income is affected, it's illegal. Well, yeah, guess what? Try and get a lawyer and get that through court. I tried and I lost almost $100,000 plus another $200,000 trying. That was my stupidity because I trusted people who promised to help me, and it turned out they just all ripped me off. I'm not going to mention names, it doesn't matter. But everything I did was to protect my mother and every Canadian. That's all I cared about, was getting legal, democratic protection for every homeowner and every registered property owner. But nobody would help me. Now, can you imagine the horror of you own a property and this can only happen in Canada, okay? That's me when I lost my first properties to my disease, and I call it Made in Canada because all of these laws are only in Canada. They've been banned in every other country. Now, can you imagine what it feels like that you get a job out of town, and when you come back a couple of years later, say you're an engineer or you're an architect, I mean, people travel, you come back and you discover that somebody has put their name on title and now owns half your property? If you go to court to get your property back, it'll cost you between $60,000 to $100,000 in several years in court. A man in Hamilton, this happened to him, and what he decided to do was, because the property at that time, we hadn't hit a boom yet, it wasn't worth millions, it was only worth a couple of $100,000, and he didn't want to spend 6-7 years in court. I've been fighting in court and with lawyers for the last 18 years, so it's not fun. Anyway, he paid the person half, and he got title back. But the person involved had no legal real claim, but try proving that in court. Okay, so then mortgage fraud. Over 100 houses from Windsor and London and Toronto in 2005 all wound up with illegal mortgages worth millions of dollars. They never went to jail, the criminals. They just left the country with the money. And insurance, they were lucky. There was insurance that covered it. But millions of homes don't have title insurance. And title insurance is the only way that you can get, and that's on my website, how to get it. And you can only get it through a lawyer, and it's a one-time fee, and it only covers mortgage fraud. Now, even if you've had your home for 20 years, it'll cover it. But people don't know that. Lawyers themselves, most of them don't know it and don't do it when you buy a home. They don't bother with it. And realtors don't know it. So a lot of good it does you to have it, but it'll cost you, let's say your property's worth $500,000, it'll cost you about $1,000, and it's a one-time fee, and it's automatically null and void when you sell. Now, it's available on a new home, existing home, and of course, when you do borrow money, they automatically, your bank will have title insurance on fraud. But millions of Canadians don't have title insurance and don't know anything about it. And mortgage fraud is extremely common in Canada, and the reason is because they can file in secret, and as a registered owner, you do not even have the right to know that somebody who has applied even to put a mortgage on your home. Now, in Saskatchewan, automatically a written registered letter, and you have to have a signature of proof that they've received, the registered owner has received, prior to any change